mechanics manual. So I'm going to tell you a story tonight about three friends. And these three friends lived in this wonderful place that had rolling mountains and green trees and fast-flowing streams, and you know, I don't have any hubris about where I live, but it looked a lot like where we live. And these three friends were very good friends. They were actually college chums, and they went to basketball games together and fishing together and did all sorts of things together as friends. Well, let me tell you about who they were. The first fellow was named Xavier, and Xavier was kind of a happy-go-lucky guy. He just sort of took things as they came and was just happy about everything and didn't see any problems with anything. He was just a great happy-go-lucky guy. The second fellow was Yuri, and Yuri was sort of a middle-of-the-road person. He didn't expect things to go badly, but if they did, he was able to work it out, and so he was kind of a middle-of-the-road type. And the third guy, Zeke, was a very intense, problem-oriented person who tried to always look ahead and have foresight and think about what might happen next. So we have X, Y, and Z. Well, one day these three friends decided that they wanted to go on an outing into the country. So they all met in the morning and were out in the country. They'd come together, and the first thing that they did was they looked out over this nice view, and Xavier looked out and he said, "Yeah, it looks great to the left and it looks great. It all looks good to me. All looks good to me." And Yuri looked out and he said, "Well, over there, there's a dump over there, and that smoke over there is a little bit hazardous to the environment, but it looks pretty good." And Zeke brought out a topographical map, and so then he very carefully showed them where all of the important features were in the landscape, and they all got together, you know, they were all together, and they all enjoyed what each one of them had to say about this. Well, then they had lunch, and Xavier had potato chips and nuts and crackers and lots of things with salt in it, but he hadn't brought any water with him. So he had to ask his friends for some water, and they gave him some water. And Yuri had just the plain old ham sandwich and cheese and lettuce. You know, just an ordinary meal, and he got along fine with his meal. And Zeke brought some high energy, one of these jolt kinds of things that gives you energy when you're out. And he had the nuts and raisins and things that give you energy when you're out in the woods. And so he had brought these things that, looking ahead, he'd taken care of all that. And so they had their lunch, and they ate well. And then after they had a little siesta, they decided they'd go off for a walk in the woods. So they're walking through the woods. And looks nice. And an hour or two goes by, and the sun starts going down over the horizon. And they can't quite figure out where the trail is, but they know that their cars are off over here. So they say, well, we're going to have to just kind of go straight in that direction. Well, in that direction is a big boulder field, and there are all these sharp rocks. Well, Zeke takes off walking, and for his walk, he had put on hiking boots, and so he's able to walk through the rocks and up and over, no problem at all. Yuri had worn some tennis shoes, which are good. They're okay out in the woods, but they're not great. So, you know, he was getting some blisters on his feet, but it wasn't anything too bad. And good old Xavier had worn flip-flops. And so he's trying to walk through the boulder field, and the flip-flops are sliding off and breaking, and he's getting his toes smashed and cut, and by the time they get to the cars, his feet are all bleeding, and he can barely make it. And so they all kind of shake each other's hands at the end of the day and make their way home. Each one of them goes as best he can. And poor old Xavier is just barely able to push the pedals on the brake because his feet are so torn up from walking through all the rough rock. So the moral to the story is that we all should have and appreciate good friends, but more often than not, you have to walk in your own shoes.